If you're like most people, you've been thinking about accountability all wrong. And so I want to share with you some insights that have made a huge difference for me in the 15 years of building my real estate team to 50 agents in 3 markets doing 500 to 700 transactions a year. So I want to first of all tell you a story about when I really learned what accountability was. And it was like being pushed off the edge of a cliff, and that's not what I recommend, but it's the beginning of this journey that I'll share with you. So going back close to 10 years ago, I was in a group where I had met some friends, and we began an accountability group. And we were talking about some short-term goals that we had. And one of mine was to get abs. It was something, that I'd never had before. It was physical health, and I knew that that would translate well to my business. And so I said to this group of gentlemen, I want to have abs. And my friend Adam pipes up and says, by when? And I was thinking, by the end of summer would be good, but I stretched it until the end of September. And then he asked an all-important question. He said, if not, then what? And I pondered that for a second. And then I thought, well, these are players. So I said, well, I'll give you each $1,000 if I don't make it. And he said to me, that's bullshit. Make it 100,000. And I thought, man, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, write me a check for $100,000 and we'll split it up if you don't have abs by the end of September. And I thought, man, this is a much different level of accountability than I was planning for. And also, what's my wife going to say? But went home, I wrote the check, put it in the mail, and proceeded to bust my absolute tail to get these abs, and had them well in advance. And as you can imagine, had the full support of my wife. Now, that's not to say that you should gamble in such a fashion or that's necessarily the right way to do things, but there's a key element here that a lot of people forget about when they're considering accountability. The first thing is that you can't have someone else impose accountability on you. You have to be a willing participant, okay? And I think too often folks look to a mentor or a friend to tell them, what they should do, or somehow feel pressured to be accountable to some goal. And I want you to think about it this way. You can be accountable to anything. That can be mowing your lawn, this weekend. It can be achieving some sort of fitness goal. It can be getting a certain number of listings. And it can really be anything. It can be big or small. The thing that you need to think about and be mindful of with any sort of goal setting like that, or any type of accountability like that, is that your brain is hardwired for survival and for comfort. Your amygdala is a leftover, piece of your brain from thousands of years ago, meant to save you from what turns out to now be things like embarrassment, or not being liked, or not receiving enough likes on your video, not doing enough business. I mean, it can be anything. It was originally designed to help us avoid significant dangers to our lives. And now this amygdala, in the vast comforts that we all have in our lives, oftentimes prevents us from taking action. And so I like to think about accountability as a way that we can overcome some outdated software. We just have this outdated wiring that's in our brain meant to protect us from things that really aren't truly threats any longer. So that little bit of thinking has helped me a lot with my accountability over the years. And I'll give you a recent example of a piece of accountability that worked really, really well for me. One of the things that I wanted to accomplish this year was to dramatically increase my volume of content. And this video is evidence of that. And so I said to my wife, hey, Mel, I really need to record, X number pieces of long format content. And here are the days that I've booked to do it. And I was notorious previously for booking over those things with other opportunities or meetings that had come up, and a lot of times would squish those windows of time so narrow that it just wouldn't get done, or it wouldn't get done in the way that was as meaningful. And so I said, hey, Mel, I wonder if you could help me with a little bit of accountability. This works really well because she's my business partner, she's my life partner, she's the mother to my kids, and she knows me like nobody else knows me. And she said, okay, well, if not, then what? And I said, well, it's got to be something that will motivate you to check in with me to see if I'm doing it. And it has to be something sufficiently uncomfortable for me that I will much prefer to do my content creation rather than face these consequences. And so she caught me today, all right? And here's what happened. So I've got Wednesday mornings, 4 hours blocked off for content and about 6 hours on Mondays. Well, I had the opportunity to attend a 45-minute needs assessment, someone that I respect today. That was the only window of time that they had. So I put it in my calendar. And lo and behold, Melanie calls me and says, hey, are you finished your call? And I said, yeah. She says, well, you booked it over your content window. You owe me. And the thing that we settled on would be that I would do any sort of activity with her that she so desired. One example of such things, she loves pedicure. She loves massages. And I'm not a fan of either of those things. She also loves barre classes. If you're not familiar with barre, it's kind of like ballet, but the exercises associated with that. So I don't know exactly what my punishment's going to be, but she caught me and I'm going to face that. And I didn't argue with her. Truth is, I need her help. You know, my scarcity from my amygdala caused me to book this time. Truthfully, I forgot about the consequences despite them being clearly outlined in my calendar. And so this is a good reminder that, you know, I've got an accountability partner that's there to support me in doing this thing that I want to do in a way that's both beneficial for her in terms of spending time with me, if she happens to catch me, and is motivational for me to do that. And so, you know, I want you to stop thinking about accountability and punishment as kind of adjacent terms. You know, any sort of good accountability is going to have some sort of outcome that is less desirable than the work that you intend to do or the goal that you intend to accomplish. And it shouldn't disadvantage anyone. It shouldn't be, you know, so painful that it could ruin you like that $100,000 check. It really should be something that is sufficiently painful that you will want to do the task that you've committed to doing. Now, the second piece of that is that you need someone who's willing to hold you to account. And this is a very difficult thing to do. You know, when you're looking for an accountability partner, you can't have someone who's prepared to let things slide. You know, you'll make all kinds of excuses in the beginning about why you couldn't do something or why you didn't follow through on this thing that you said that you would. And the person who you're choosing as your accountability partner doesn't necessarily have to be invested in the work being done or in whatever the negative outcome is, but they most certainly should be an accountable person themselves who's committed to supporting you in your success journey. And someone who's not willing to accept your excuses and who's willing to, you know, put those measures in place should you not. So be very careful about who you choose. Now, a common misconception is that this person needs to be somebody incredibly close to you. That's not the case at all. I mean, if you were to go ahead and just put a message out on Facebook today and say, you know, I've got a goal, you know, in this realm, you know, fitness or business or whatever, and I'm looking for an accountability partner, and were to simply define, you know, what it is that you were looking for, you'd have a series of folks to interview and you could talk to that person. Now, one of the ways that that can work when you're not in the same house, like Melanie and I are, or where she sees my calendar and maybe your accountability partner does not, is to do a touch base. I have a friend who's had a 3 or 4 year running accountability with a friend of theirs, and they touch base by text every morning with the 3 things that they've each committed to doing on the previous day and how they've done it. They've established a lot of trust, so there's no need for evidence. But if you're in the early stages of establishing an accountability partnership, that's something that you'll also want to consider, is that it's easy to say that you've done something and you will find yourself just either making excuses or, you know, extrapolating that, you know, you've completely done this task when really you've only done like 60% of it. And so I would strongly encourage you also to incorporate some sort of evidence in that, be it a screenshot or a video of you doing something that proves that you were in fact there doing the thing that you've committed to doing. And with those things put together, you've got yourself a really good strategy for being successful and moving the needle on those things that you've historically stumbled upon. And remember that you don't have to start huge. Start small. Remember that small hinges swing big doors. And remember the philosophy that I'm sure you've heard about, and I talk lots about in my coaching, around stacking success. So start small. Start with something that you know that you can win at over a short period of time. Build some accountability around that, kind of get your neural pathways wired in that way, and then begin stacking new habits or new accountability on top of that. And before too long, you're going to realize that you're a highly accountable person and that you really do find yourself inspired and motivated to do these things that you previously found painful. Why? Because your amygdala was previously viewing this as being a painful thing. It was procrastinating on it, deferring it, making excuses about why to do it. And now you've made it current because you've attached an immediate outcome that is unpleasant to you in some capacity, and makes it really, really easy to move forward and to get these things done. I know that that's worked really, really well for me. It's helped me manage my time so much more efficiently. It's helped me be far more accountable to the things that I had been procrastinating on and been deferring, and just helps me avoid those periods of time where, when you're procrastinating, you think of something, you feel that shame and guilt, and, maybe you think about it for 5 or 10 minutes and then something comes up and you move on. If you think about the cumulative negative impact of those emotions on the way that you show up to the rest of the world, wouldn't it be better if you could just blow past that, get the thing done, and then spend more time in flow, in joy, serving at a higher level? And I know that's certainly been the outcome for me, and I know it'll work for you too. So go ahead, let me know how it works for you once you've tried it, okay? Take good care.